During World War I, Ireland was still subjugated to Britain. In 1916, Ireland's Easter Rising was orchestrated by the Irish Republican Brotherhood, IRB, collaborating with the Irish Volunteers and the Irish Citizen Army, ICA. The rebels aimed to establish an Irish state as Britain was distracted by the Great War raging in Europe. On April 24th, roughly 1,600 insurgents seized key Dublin sites, including the General Post Office, proclaiming a republic. However, the rising faltered due to poor coordination, limited public support, and insufficient arms as German weapon shipments were intercepted. Owen McNeill's countermanding order reduced volunteer turnout, and British forces, numbering 20,000, swiftly crushed the rebellion within a week, shelling Dublin and causing 485 casualties, mostly civilians. The rising's failure stemmed from its premature timing and lack of mass backing, but harsh British reprisals, executing 15 leaders and interning thousands, shifted public opinion. The martyrs' sacrifice galvanized nationalism, setting the stage for the Irish War of Independence in 1919. Led by Michael Collins and the IRA, the 1921 Anglo-Irish Treaty ended the war, creating the Irish Free State, a dominion of 26 counties, separating 6 Ulster counties into Northern Ireland, which remained British. Finally, in 1949, after another world war, Ireland formally left the British Commonwealth and declared itself the Republic of Ireland. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. I'm trying to get to 70,000 subs by the end of June. Gotta keep it growing to keep it going. If you'd like to take it a step further, you can also support me on Patreon, where you'll get access to the maps and other exclusive content from the videos. Thanks so much. Now back into the video. For Ireland to defeat the Redcoats and secure their full independence during World War I, the Central Powers needed to win the war. This would rely upon a stronger Austria so the Germans could wipe out the Entente in the West. So back in 1878, Austria-Hungary went on a series of massive political and military reforms after their disastrous Bosnian expedition, adding the Third Crown of Croatia to East Balkan unrest, reclaiming their spot as a great power by the time of the war. You can watch all that in more detail in the previous videos of the series, but welcome to the world of Doppeladler. The roots of the Irish Rebellion trace back to the Home Rule crisis of 1912 to 1914, which fractured Ireland's political ethos. The Third Home Rule Bill, passed but shelved at the war's outbreak, electrified constitutional nationalists while enraging unionists. The IRB infiltrated the Irish Volunteers, a paramilitary force formed in 1913 to defend Home Rule, seizing upon Britain's continental distraction, rallying roughly 12,000 men. John Redmond's call for Irishmen to join the British Army split the Volunteers, leaving a militant corps under the IRB's sway. Alongside them stood the ICA, a socialist militia led by James Connolly, formed to protect Union men from strike bearers after the 1913 Dublin lockout. The IRB's military council, Patrick Pearse, Thomas Clark, Sean McDermott, plotted a nationwide uprising, drawing on the 1798 and 1848 rebellions, while the Gaelic League's cultural revival, championed by Pearse, used the Irish identity as a call to arms. Connolly's readiness to act alone unnerved the IRB, fearing a botched revolt, but a fragile alliance emerged between the factions. The Volunteers brought manpower, the ICA urban combat leadership, and the IRB strategic vision. Coman Naman, the women's auxiliary, proved indispensable in smuggling arms and gathering intelligence, while the Hibernian Rifles, a minor nationalist splinter, joined. Across the Atlantic, Clan na Gael funneled American dollars and drummed up support, but here, the real game changer was German aid. Roger Kaufmann's negotiations in Berlin secured German weapons and officers as the Austrians had closed the Balkan front and were bearing the brunt of the Russian theater, so the Germans could spare the armaments for an Irish Hail Mary. The Kaiserliche Marine orchestrated the delivery of 20,000 rifles, 10 machine guns, and 500,000 rounds of ammunition, and vital German officers, all via U-boat landings in Kerry and Clare. Preoccupied with France, the British intel, though informed of the plot, failed to detect the shipments that arrived in February and March 1916. The influx swayed doubters like Owen McNeill, the Volunteers' hesitant leader, to quietly back the rising. Those reservations lingered. Battle-hardened German advisors trained select volunteers in sabotage and urban tactics, unbeknownst to MI5. On April 24, 1916, the Easter Rising exploded. 1,600 volunteers and ICA fighters armed with German Mausers stormed Dublin. The General Post Office became their stronghold, where Pearse proclaimed the Irish Republic to cheering crowds. Seizing the virtually undefended Dublin castle, catching its meager 30-man garrison off guard, this symbolic earthquake was used for propaganda leaflets as a tricolour over its ramparts ignited nationalist fervour. The Four Courts, Boland's Mill, and Jacob's Factory formed a fortified web, held firmly by German-trained discipline against early British counterattacks from the army. Meanwhile, in Cork, the brigade's 8,000 volunteers captured military and police barracks and severed rail lines, throttling British reinforcements. Munster's Republican heartlands, Kerry, Limerick, and Tipperary, erupted in smaller risings, ambushing police and raiding arms depots. British forces, led by Major General Sir Lubbock Bransby Friend, rolled into Dublin on April 26 with 10,000 troops and artillery. Royal Navy shells pounded rebel positions, reducing O'Connell Street and the GPO to rubble. Dublin Castle fell back to the British on April 28 after brutal fighting, costing the rebels dearly. By April 30th, Pearce and some of the other rising leaders escaped through County Louth into the interior of the country. The death toll in Dublin was 300 civilians, 100 rebels, and 80 British soldiers. In Cork, the brigade clung until May 1st, retreating to the countryside as British reinforcements swarmed into the city. Dublin's historic heart, like the Custom House, was heavily shelled by the Brits. Connolly, Plunkett, and MacDiarmid decided to stay behind and cover their retreat before they were captured and executed. Far from breaking the rebellion, the Rising's martyrs sparked a guerrilla war. Survivors, led by Thomas Ashe, Michael Mallon, and Richard Mulcahy, regrouped in Munster and Connacht's rugged terrain, striking British convoys, barracks, and officials. Collins' intelligence networks targeted British officers and informers, logging 2,000 guerrilla attacks. The British unleashed the army, who razed villages like Fermoy and Balbriggan, torching over 500 buildings and executed hundreds of suspected rebels. Cork remained the rebellion's beating heart, its No. 2 Brigade under Liam Lynch ambushing patrols, while Tipperary's Dan Breen led daring raids on RIC barracks. Munster's resistance succeeded, with farmers offering safe houses and intelligence. Austria-Hungary-Croatia's dismantling of Serbia and Russia's collapse by 1916 left Britain reeling. Germany, wary of Habsburg dominance, doubled down on Ireland, sending more guns and advisors. France's fall in 1918 stretched Britain thinner, freeing rebels to escalate attacks. The British countered with martial law, interning 5,000 suspects in camps, while the army's burning of Cork City in December killed a dozen civilians and razed 300 buildings. Yet these atrocities backfired, swelling volunteer ranks, turning moderates against British rule. Germany's escalation began in late 1918 once France crumbled. With the Western Front secured, Kaiser Wilhelm II saw Ireland as a dagger to Britain, its 2 million captured soldiers and colonial unrest exposing vulnerabilities. 50 German officers, led by Colonel von Hans Hartwig von Bessler, landed via U-boats, their Eastern Front experience teaching Irish units in explosives, coordinated assaults, and advanced tactics. The Irish Brigade, 1,200 former Irish POWs recruited in German camps, followed, led by Captain Liam Tobin. Their discipline bolstered morale, while German shipments, 30,000 rifles, 20 machine guns, 5 mortars, funneled through Brest to Munster's rugged coasts, armed the rebels. Britain's grip on Ireland tightened, with 50,000 troops by 1919 torching over 1,000 buildings and killing 1,000 civilians. The IRA remained active with ambushes while German-trained units crippled the rail network, leaving much of the island ungovernable, isolating Dublin. Near Limerick, the Irish Brigade's disciplined volleys repelled the British advance, earning local reverence. Von Bessler's plan to liberate Dublin relied heavily on Irish grit and German firepower. On March 15th, a combined 7,000 struck at dawn, overwhelming British garrisons. German mortars silenced British artillery, while volunteer snipers stalled reinforcements. By March 20th, Dublin was rebel-held, igniting a nationalist fervor across the island. Britain's convoys were ambushed with German machine guns, entire British patrols of 20 to 30 soldiers were wiped out while prisoners were executed by the Irish. June's Battle of Clonmel followed, with volunteer columns and Irish Brigade shock troops crushing a British convoy, capturing 200 prisoners. These triumphs shattered British control in Connacht and Munster, but a conclusive August push for Belfast completely failed. The Irish underestimated Ulster Unionist resolve. Ulster militias, backed by 10,000 British troops, repelled 3,500 rebels at Lisburn. Nonetheless, Britain, battered by domestic unrest and a potential German invasion, sought peace. The Treaty of Amsterdam, concomitantly with negotiations concluding the Great War with the Germans, birthed an independent Ireland across 28 counties, including Fermanagh and Tyrone, their Catholic nationalist majorities rightfully home. Ulster's 4 counties, Antrim, Down, Armagh, and Derry, stayed British as Northern Ireland. Britain secured 2 concessions. Ireland was barred from hosting any foreign military bases, safeguarding British seas, and Britain retained control over extant transatlantic telegraph cables, though Ireland could build her own. Ireland was finally free. Almost immediately after the treaty was signed, socialists running to the banner of the martyred Connolly followed his words. If you remove the English army tomorrow and hoist a green flag over Dublin Castle, unless you set about the organization of a socialist republic, your efforts will be in vain. England will still rule you. She would rule you through her capitalists, through her landlords, through her financiers, through the whole array of commercial and individualist institutions she has planted in this country, and watered with the tears of our mothers and the blood of our martyrs. In response, a conservative push, grateful for German support, accepted the proffer of a Teutonic monarch, under Prince Franz of Bavaria, to anchor Ireland's Catholic and Gaelic identity. The treaty's ink barely dried before discord erupted. The IRA had pled for a united republic, but partition and perceived German overlordship enraged anti-treaty stalwarts like Mallon, Liam Lynch, and Rory O'Connor, who demanded a 32-county state with a mantra, one island, one Ireland. Constance Markievicz faced mounting pressure from these hardliners, while conservative nationalists like Arthur Griffith and W.T. Cosgrave pointed not only to the economic, political, and military separation achieved, but order and recovery, eyeing a constitutional monarchy to align with Europe's newfound Germanic system. The Rising's leaders were divided. Both sides claimed the martyrs Connolly, Plunkett, and MacDiarmid, whilst the remaining leaders, Pearse, MacDonagh, and Kent, split with Clark, siding with Republicans. The Irish Volunteers also splintered. Ashe's National Army, 25,000 strong, rallied to the provisional government, while Lynch's 8,000 anti-treaty IRA fighters dug in across Munster. Cumann na mBan and the Irish Citizens Army, still active, tilted Republican with calls for social revolution. Pearse's provisional government, fearing a communist takeover, accepted the proposal from their German ally of a monarchy under Prince Franz of Bavaria. Germany, distrustful of socialist Republicans, endorsed the plan, funneling arms and funds to the pro-monarchy forces. Franz, a Wittelsbach Catholic, appealed to the Conservatives as a unifying figure free of British taint, his lack of English framed as a boon for Gaelic revivals pushed to restore Irish as a national tongue. Although it may sound impossible, Ernest Blythe, who was historically an active member of Sinn Féin during this period, and eventually the finance minister and even later a senator, wrote in the Irish Times in the 60s that many Republican leaders, including Desmond Fitzgerald, Thomas MacDonagh, Bulmer Hobson, Patrick Pearse, and Joseph Plunkett, all actually supported this idea in 1915. When the plans leaked, Markievicz decried the monarchy's betrayal of the Republic, while Lynch's IRA seized Limerick's King John's Castle, proclaiming it a Republican bastion. Anti-treatyists began occupying former British garrisons and marking them as Republican territory. On April 10, 1920, Dublin erupted as anti-treaty forces stormed the Four Courts. The pro-monarchy camp began negotiations with the Republicans, initially unwilling to attack their former comrades and open to split the Socialists from those merely against partition. Impatient, the Germans insisted that the Irish must crush the revolt or face the storm alone. With the Germans, Ashe's National Army units swarmed into Dublin, alongside the Irish Brigade, bolstered by more Irish POWs who now eagerly flocked home after Germany liberated their homeland. On April 15th, Ashe's forces shelled the Four Courts, forcing a Republican surrender after 2 days. The fighting spilled into Munster, where Lynch's columns ambushed convoys in Cork and Kerry. The Battle of Macroom on May 3rd saw 200 Republicans repel 300 government troops, killing 40, but their lack of artillery capped their gains. The National Army, swollen to 50,000, seized Cork on June 20th, scattering Republican units. Germany's aid proved decisive once more, as 20 German officers landed in Ireland, orchestrating National Army offensives, while they delivered 2,000 machine guns to Galway. The Catholic Church, a towering influence, backed the monarchy, with Archbishop John Harty of Cashel hailing Franz as Ireland's Catholic shield. Nevertheless, support for the rebels came from tenant farmers wishing for land reforms. In response, dozens of country homes were burned, frightening the predominantly Protestant gentry. The National Army's edge shown at the Battle of Tralee on June 10th, where 1,000 troops, backed by German artillery, crushed 400 Republicans, killing 60. Lynch, his supplies dwindling, lost support from many Republicans, who were already unwilling to face their countrymen. The war's final months were marred by atrocities. In response to executions conducted by individual National Army units, Ashe and Mulcahy urged the government to permit the activities, which the government did. Republicans struck back, assassinating a pro-monarchy minister in Clare, whose home burned to ash. The death toll reached 200 civilians, while 300 Republicans were executed, alongside the razing of Limerick's Georgian quarter. By August 5th, Markievicz was captured near Clonmel, urging socialists to give up the worthless fight, but the civil war only ended once Clark was killed in a battle. Mallon, the succeeding leader of the rebels, scattered the weapons and quit the fight. The civil war was over. With Ireland finally pacified, Franz arrived with his Bavarian entourage. The coronation ceremony was originally supposed to take place in St. Mary's Pro-Cathedral, but Franz, wishing to score an easy victory, insisted it be held at St. Patrick's Cathedral. As the cathedral had been held by the Church of England since King Henry VIII in 1537, it was given back to the Catholic Church, with the coronation taking place on September 19, 1920, with German and Austrian diplomats in attendance, as Franz was crowned King Prontius I, a good Irish name. While Prontius brought stability alongside a powerful ally in Germany, the scars from the Civil War ran deep as Ireland was in a difficult position with their weakened but looming British rival. An Irish constitution was passed enshrining absolute suffrage, something the Irish insisted upon. Social provisions were advanced, including land reform, expropriating the landed estates, and expanding small farmers' property, giving land to tillers. The king accepted a bicameractus, their parliament, where he had appointment to the power of the upper house while the lower house was filled via popular elections, sharing executive power with An Taoiseach, the prime minister. The courts provided a headache as the Gaelic League, headed by Pearse, demanded the complete restoration of Brehon law. This would have proved too challenging to implement, so it remained essentially British common law. Ultimately, the new system was hailed as an innovative path forward, providing a platform for the Irish to govern themselves. Now that Ireland was free from England, make sure to subscribe to see the fate of the British Empire. Future videos will also cover Germany, Russia, America, and the Ottomans, all in the world of Doppeladler. I'm currently working to turn this into a Hearts-Fire format like Kaiserreich, so if you want to help, join my Discord server. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to click here to see another one of my videos. I know you'll like them. If you appreciate my work, please like, subscribe, and consider supporting me on Patreon to get access to the maps and more. Thanks for sticking around to the end. Good goodbye.